On a dark and stormy night, I found myself in an old, creaky cabin nestled deep within the woods. The rain poured relentlessly, the wind howled like a banshee, and the trees whispered eerie secrets. I was here for a weekend getaway, seeking solitude and inspiration for my writing. As the night wore on, I lit a flickering candle and settled into an armchair, wrapped in a cozy blanket. The rain hammered on the cabin's roof like 1,000 bony fingers tapping impatiently. I began to hear strange, distant sounds, a faint, mournful wail carried on the wind. My heart raced. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into darkness. My pulse quickened as fear crept into my mind. I fumbled for my flashlight, but the batteries were dead. The room was now only illuminated by the dim candlelight. Then, I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway. Panic surged through me, and I clutched the blanket tightly. The steps drew nearer, each one echoing in the eerie silence of the cabin. I whispered a prayer for safety. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its features shrouded in obscurity. I could only see its glowing eyes, which glimmered with malevolence. It moved closer, and I could feel its chilling breath on my neck. Terrified, I bolted from the chair and stumbled into the hallway. The figure pursued me relentlessly, its footsteps echoing behind me like a nightmare. I reached the front door, flung it open, and dashed out into the pouring rain. I ran through the woods, branches scratching at my skin, the rain soaking me to the bone. I didn't dare look back, but the sensation of being pursued never left me. Exhausted and terrified, I eventually stumbled upon a remote road and flagged down a passing car. The driver, a kind-hearted stranger, took me to safety and called the police. They investigated the cabin but found no signs of the mysterious figure. To this day, I can't explain what I encountered on that rainy night, but the fear it instilled in me is etched in my memory, and I'll never forget the horrors that lurked in the darkness of that cabin in the woods. It was a rainy night in October, and I was on my way home from work. As I drove down the deserted country road, I could feel a chill in the air, the kind that creeps up your spine and gives you goosebumps. Suddenly, my headlights illuminated something in the distance. It looked like a person, standing in the middle of the road. I slowed down and rolled down my window, but there was no one there. I thought it must have been my imagination playing tricks on me. As I continued on my way, the rain grew heavier and the wind howled through the trees. I was almost home, but then I heard a strange noise coming from my car, a kind of scraping, scratching sound. I pulled over to the side of the road to investigate, but all I could see was a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the darkness. And then the horror began. I heard a faint whispering voice, calling out my name. The rain was so loud, I could not be certain. I was scared and cold. Then, I saw some movement, and something had walked past my car. I shuddered, and my heart raced. It was not a human figure. It was something dark and sinister. I tried to restart my car, but it wouldn't start. My phone had no signal. It was getting darker, and the rain was getting heavier. I was stranded, with no help in sight. Then, I saw a figure emerging from the woods. It was a woman, soaked to the bone, with hair plastered to her face. She beckoned me to follow her. I hesitated, but finally, I decided to follow her. I stumbled through the woods, the rain pelting me mercilessly. But the woman led me to a small cabin. It looked abandoned, but it offered shelter from the rain. I stepped inside, and the door creaked closed behind me. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze and realized there was no front window. I was trapped inside the cabin, with no way out. And then, I saw the ghostly face of the woman. She was a murdered victim, seeking revenge on whoever she could lure into her trap. The storm outside raged on, and I was trapped inside that haunted cabin. But to this day, I still don't know if the woman was a ghost, A witch? Or just my own overactive imagination conjuring up another spooky story? On a chilly autumn night, as the rain relentlessly tapped against my windowpane, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. My old, creaky house seemed to come alive with eerie sounds, its wooden beams groaning in protest against the relentless storm. I decided to distract myself with an old family photo album, hoping to find some comfort in nostalgia. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, I stumbled upon a picture that sent shivers down my spine. It was a photograph of my great-grandmother, taken on a rainy night just like this one, over a century ago. Her eyes held a haunting depth, and her expression was one of profound sadness. I had heard whispers in the family that she had endured a nightmarish ordeal during that fateful night, but details were always scarce. Unable to resist my curiosity, I decided to delve into the family archives, searching for any clues about that night. In the attic, hidden away in a dusty chest, I discovered a collection of journals belonging to my great-grandmother. The pages were fragile, and the ink had faded with time, but her words painted a vivid picture of terror. According to her writings, on that rainy night, the world outside was plunged into darkness by a power outage. She was alone in the house, with only the dim glow of a single candle to ward off the encroaching shadows. The rain drummed on the roof like 1,000 ghostly fingers, setting her on edge. As she readied herself for bed, she heard an unsettling noise coming from the hallway, a soft, mournful sobbing. It seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Fear clenched at her heart as she ventured into the corridor, guided only by the flickering candlelight. The sobbing grew louder, echoing through the house, and she realized it was coming from the locked door to the basement. Trembling, she fumbled for the key and, with trembling hands, unlocked the door. What she found in that dark abyss would haunt her for the rest of her days. In her journal, she described a ghastly, dripping figure, with eyes like endless voids, rising from the depths of the basement. It whispered in a language she couldn't understand, and its icy touch sent a chill through her soul. The entity seemed trapped, tormented by an unfathomable sorrow, and it yearned for release. Terrified, my great-grandmother wrote of a desperate ritual she performed to banish the entity, a ritual involving incantations and symbols she had discovered in an ancient tome hidden in the attic. She claimed that, as the clock struck midnight, the entity let out a bone-chilling wail before vanishing into thin air, leaving her with a chilling sense of emptiness. Whether this tale was fact or fiction, I couldn't say, but as I read the final, trembling words in her journal, the power in my house flickered and died. I was plunged into darkness, the rain continuing its relentless assault on the windows. And then, just beyond the threshold of my hearing, I thought I heard the faintest, mournful sobbing, as if something from the past had returned to claim its release. Sure. Here's a true rainy night horror story told by a person. It was a chilly autumn evening, and the rain poured heavily, creating an eerie atmosphere. I had just returned from visiting some friends and was looking forward to getting home, curling up under a warm blanket, and enjoying a cup of hot cocoa. Little did I know that this night would forever be etched in my memory as one of the scariest experiences of my life. As I entered my small, creaky house, the sound of rain hitting the rooftop grew louder, setting a melancholic backdrop. The interior felt gloomy, dimly lit by the flickering of occasional lights. I shook off the uneasy feeling and made my way to the kitchen, with the sound of water dripping from my soaked clothes echoing through the silent house. As I poured cocoa powder into a mug, I became aware of an unfamiliar sound, a soft scratching noise coming from upstairs. I paused, trying to dismiss it as my imagination running wild. However, it continued, growing louder and more persistent. Curiosity taking hold of me, I slowly crept upstairs, the stairs creaking under the weight of my every step. Reaching the top, I saw that the hallway stretched out in both directions, doors leading to different rooms. The scratching sound persisted, seeming to come from the end of the hallway. My heart began racing as I approached the source of the noise. The house felt colder, and the air grew dense with an unexplainable dread. I found myself standing in front of the door to my study, the very room that I rarely entered, an area tucked away from the daily hustle and bustle. As I twisted the doorknob and pushed it open, a gust of cold air greeted me. The room was pitch black, except for a faint glow from a desktop computer in the far corner. Hesitantly, I made my way towards the computer, still unsure of what I might find. The scratching sound was louder now, almost deafening. The closer I got, the heavier the atmosphere became, as if an invisible force was trying to hold me back. As I reached the desk, I saw something that made my blood run cold, a handprint on the computer screen. It was placed in such a way that it looked as though someone had pressed their hand against it from the inside. The scratches worsened, growing more frantic and aggressive. Suddenly, the lights in the room started flickering, and I could feel an unearthly presence surrounding me. Fear overwhelmed me as I quickly turned to leave the room, only to be met with a sight that sent shivers down my spine. Standing in the doorway was a shadowy figure, tall and thin, with eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Its presence was suffocating, paralyzing me with an indescribable terror. Time seemed to stand still as the creature moved closer, a sinister smile forming on its face. Unable to bear it any longer, I let out a piercing scream, desperate for anyone to hear me and come to my aid. The creature lunged forward, its nails digging into my arms as I fought to break free. With a last surge of strength, I managed to escape its grasp, stumbling down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran out into the rain-soaked night, seeking refuge and safety. The terror I experienced that rainy night continues to haunt me to this day. I have never returned to that house, unable to shake the feeling that something otherworldly resides within its walls. The true horror of that night remains etched in my mind, a chilling reminder that sometimes, there are things we cannot explain, things that can only be described as nightmares come to life.